Welcome, everybody, to Season 3, Episode 1, Highly Questionable Marketing. Season 3, but we're coming real close to Q4 here, Jurgen. And we just wanted to take stock of where the hell we're at as a marketing community right now, and just see where we've come. We've been at this shit all through 2022. Why don't you give me a lowdown on how you're feeling right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's that crazy time of year where you think there's a lot more clock and there's really not a lot more clock. And it just goes so unbelievably fast. Like, we'll be blinking and it'll be 2023, and people will be like, holy shit, what's going on? What are we doing now? The companies that are already taking off and seeing like crazy growth just because, like they're going to be great. And then for everybody else, it's going to be pretty painful. And I think like the thing that we've probably both noticed throughout 2022 is that the LinkedIn echo chamber is stronger than ever, And the funny thing is that, the overwhelming majority of B2B marketing content on LinkedIn is coming from an incredibly small portion of people. It's just that there's so many people regurgitating the stuff. So you think this is what everybody's saying, everybody's believing, but most people are just taking something that sounds smart and they're running with it, right? There is no finer in quotes, air quotes, example of this than this whole create versus capture demand. And boy, have we gone at this already a few times, but it's time to do it again because it's, and I really do not mean disrespect to my fellow marketers. I just mean that we collectively must do better in terms of how we consume information and then what we do in terms of putting stuff back out there, because people are just on autopilot now looking to try to look half as good as Chris Walker, but meanwhile like so many of us are just looking as like fools, right? So give me your right here right now Q4 2022, like what is your hot take, because I know it's hot, man. Hot take on capture versus create demand.
My hot take straight up as I think about this, that we just need to walk away from is this idea that I think kind of what we said, like this idea that one, marketing can create demand. Like, in my opinion, absolutely not, because it positions kind of a theme that we've been talking about a little bit, which is that growth is marketing. And it's this idea that you take marketing and you can go create demand with your marketing. And that's not how this shit works. And I think what gets really scary and what kind of brought this topic up for us is there was a post, and much love and much respect, right, from Gil from Metadata. He's a CEO over there. Again, much respect. But he said his number one thing that he expects from marketing is to create demand. Like, that's the number one thing he expects from marketing. And you said something that I've been thinking about more and more is most marketing teams are starting from a point of defense. And if that's now the marching orders being marched down, it instantly puts you on defense now, because you're sitting there looking back or looking out at the landscape thinking, shit, my CEO expects me to go out and create all this demand, regardless of the product, regardless of the market, regardless of how much demand is out there. That's the number one goal that I'm looked at. So everybody's getting this view now that growth comes from sales plus marketing, and that shit is not how this works. And that's what I want people to get like out of this. Like, as we go on through season 3, like you said, the Chris Walker thing, what's pissing me off is everybody that catches on to this now and pushes that message out there on this create demand thing, and that's your fucking job in marketing. And when I read all this, all I really read is run ads on brand and build awareness, and we call it create demand. And that's not even close to what's happening.
Oh, but Jay, you don't get it, like your point of view and your perspective that you've built up just probably isn't strong enough, or you're just not doing the ads right, like you might not be doing paid social right because you don't understand the dark funnel and dark social. More seriously, let's just pretend like somebody is arguing against us on this, right? Because I know a lot of people are. Like, whoever's listening to this is probably thinking, what the fuck are these guys talking about? But think about it, right? Like, you're being asked to create demand, and the solution seems to be have a strong perspective that B2B buyers, would find interesting, and then get the content that represents that perspective out there however you can, aka paid social if we're talking any scale, and then watch the demand just bubble up inside of these human beings to the point where they reach back out to you. Like, first of all, when you really think about it, like, that's not how B2B buying happens. Secondly, like, it's it's just the exact same thing that we've been doing, right? You call this out before anybody else, I think. They're saying that it's like the new game or the new name for the same old game, right? But like I've been doing this for a little while, and like we've always been trying to get some kind of point of view out there, do some thought leadership or whatever, and but like the thought that this just creates demand, like what are we doing here?
Yeah. It, there's so many ways to take this. Not like my like as I think through this, it's just the state of it's really unfortunate in my opinion. Like I'm really on you with this defensiveness of marketing now, and what that means, because it's just really shitty time right now to be a marketing leader. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are selling marketing stuff saying how great it is, and here I am. I call myself a growth agency. We work specifically with marketing. I think it's actually a terrible time to be in marketing because the pressure is so great on marketing. They're asked to do so much right now, and so many damn companies right now just don't get it. So many companies are getting to 1 million to 5 million to 10 million. They don't ever realize that they kind of just hacked their way there through doing a shit ton of activities. And that's the key to growth. And then they get to 10 million. I literally talked to a B2B company today, and they're like, great, now we're going to get to 100 million. It's like, but what you have is not sustainable. You keep viewing the world through sales plus marketing equals growth. And like you can break down, in my opinion, almost every B2B growth strategy for a company. It's we hire salespeople to do outbounding and start calling leads and doing activities. Then we hire marketing people to push our product and our message to our target market. And that's going to drive exponential growth. And are they shocked every year when they don't get the growth that they want? I mean, we've both, I think, worked at companies that hit about 10 million. They hit that plateau. They think they're just going to start scaling everything they're doing, and they are shocked when it doesn't scale because nobody ever realized what they had was never scalable. You actually, because I've been and seen so many companies, you look back and you're like, we kind of just hacked our way there. And don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work. Like, great job. You should be super proud to even get to 10 million, in my opinion. But we've never realized as executive teams, as marketing leaders, as sales orgs, that we kind of essentially just hacked our way there. And we never got there in a sustainable fashion. And at some point, when you start to reach that, you have to drive more sustainable growth, something that compounds on top of itself, or you will always get linear growth. And that's just what I really like. Everything that's being talked about in the echo chamber is not helpful if you're trying to achieve sustainable compounding growth. If you think you're going to hack your way there, go create demand, go sit in a room and go create your damn category, go do all that stuff. But I firmly believe it is not a sustainable growth strategy. It is, like you said, the same song and dance that we are being, us marketers, believed in now, which is we went from lead based to ABM to brand to demand gen. Now everybody's talking about you need to create demand because we're in a recession. It's just a buzzword and a new name for the same tactical bullshit that's inefficient, that doesn't scale, that does not sustain.
Real quick, my man, I'm gonna go on record and say I still am a pretty big believer in category design. So I'm just gonna like put that out there, and we can come back to that later. But
Yeah.
that that's not the point, right? The point is that there are people in rooms that are kind of taking the easiest path to something that looks like category design, and it's really
Yes.
just kind of a hack. Um, here's the really uncomfortable truth. The truth, the way I see it, right, is that the companies that grow kind of significantly, right? A good chunk of them, as you've called out before, grow because their category is growing. And so like they just struck at the right time and they're well positioned in that category. And of course they've done a lot of great things to get to that point as a business. So it's not taking anything away, but it's not necessarily growth as a result of approaching the challenge of business growth through this discipline of doing the things that, like it's a little different, right?
Yeah.
That, go ahead, man. I'll let you hop in.
Yeah, I would say like so in the generalness of category design, what you're talking about there, I agree with you, right? And we've talked about this at length, which is this there's this idea though that you're targeting cold buyers and you're creating all this demand. That's not what's happening in my opinion. Like I still talk about the nuances of attracting growth. I think what you're doing is the market for the most part is what's exponentially growing. And if you are the category creator per se or the designer, you can attract a majority of that demand that's coming in because of how you're positioned, right? Like, so I believe in that in the sense of I think we're probably very similar in that regards, right? Like, I don't want to get too off topic, but there's just this nuance of how I get really pissed off with this is the create demand. So marketing's going out there and people just expect it to exponentially like, great. So what are you telling me now? 20% of the market's in market now? Like, that's not what's happening. Like, that piece isn't moving. Probably what's happened is the general market's growing exponentially. And if yes, you are the category designer or creator, you are very well positioned to capture a majority of that market share.
Yeah. So, okay. So, one scenario for meaningful business growth is categories growing at a rate maybe even higher than the business, and the business is there to take advantage of it. And props to anybody in that situation. There's absolutely no hate going on. It's just like, that's awesome, right? Another one is,
Hey, I want to ask you one more thing. Not to disrupt you, but I just been thinking about this category design thing. I want to get your opinion. I think it was a lot easier when you think about the examples when it was still the old school models, right? Which was like Salesforce versus like an on-prem solution versus like right, like the Oracles and shit. The world's not like that anymore, right? Like it's really just I don't want to get off topic, but like it's just getting
okay.
harder to do that shit because it was so easy to do it back then, but the world is a SaaS world now.
Yeah, I'll play with you over there for a second, right? That it's a fun conversation. So, I think there's a point to that it was a little bit more. There were bigger steps taken, X number of years ago. Right now, there's so many layers and so many flavors and so much going on already. But you can't argue that that is also a reason why category design is more important than ever, right? But I think the biggest aha that I've had around category design lately is that a lot of us who are out there talking about it, and myself, by the way, when I'm talking about it, I'm doing some of that, dreaded regurgitating that I'm talking about others doing with creator and capture. Nobody's innocent here, right? But I think one of the mistakes we've all made when spewing about category design, whether we're gushing over it and loving it or just completely shitting on it, right? Is that we've thought about it like from this very sort of narrow place of like, well, I've been in a startup before, and I've seen it tried and I've not tried it here, but I've tried, and we have this like very narrow set of experiences around it. And we think,
Yeah.
we think too small too, right? Like we think too small. Then you take an example. I was listening to one of these Lockheed episodes not too long ago, and you hear a little bit about the story of Qualtrics. You familiar with Qualtrics?
A little
So,
bit, yeah.
for a very, very, very long time, they were a survey company. I'm talking years and years and years and years. They were a survey company competing with SurveyMonkey. All right. They
Yeah.
finally, after years, and also, by the way, already being phenomenally successful, they finally created their own category around experience management. The kind of like surveying and data that you would do in the workplace to understand and manage the experience, right? So, like, that was a big shift that took them from maybe being $1 billion company to a multi-billion-dollar company, right? Most of us who are out here talking about this shit aren't big boys like that. Like we're
Yeah.
out of our depth, right? We're thinking about our rinky-dink bullshit little startup that we may have like had some experience with that had the chance to be sold for a few tens of millions of dollars at some point, and with some luck we could have gotten a little check off of that, right? And so we're like, oh, well, I think category, like we're not even playing in the fucking right league to be talking about it in the
Yeah.
first place. And so what I think has happened is that so many people talked about category design in this sort of like, amateur league-ish kind of way, not understanding what it can do when you're really playing the fucking game, And that's like
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with that right now. But let me just kind of close it back to like what's going on right now and with companies in different situations having growth. Very few of the types of companies we're talking about are actually growing because they have done amazing category design. There's a very small percentage of companies that pull that off, right? So that's also for most startups, it's not that it isn't viable. It's not that it isn't like somewhat realistic. It's just that it isn't feasible for most because you got to be so damn good.
Hmm.
So, like, I know you're eager to jump in, but let me just close this loop here a little bit, right? So, companies could be growing because the category is growing, maybe a few because they've done really great category design or whatever. But to your point again, from I don't know however many minutes ago, but like most of them have just kind of hacked their way without realizing that they've hacked their way. Oh, we're trying some of this, and we're testing this, and we're layering on this, and we're doing this. All of which are just like an endless amount of tactics, right? Leading to growth, sometimes maybe a little bit more than linear and like maybe meaningful and especially early on. And that can like, but this thought that you can create demand in that situation to take you into this exponential growth trajectory and your business is just going to take off and it's so simple that either you're creating demand and winning big time or you're just only capturing demand and you're like a loser. Like that black and white kind of picture is so absolutely ridiculous. So the narrative
Yeah.
around it all is just not helpful in any kind of fucking way.
Yeah. Yeah. The real issue with all of this is when, in my opinion, you have a CEO that comes out and says, I expect my marketing team to generate demand.
Yeah.
And that becomes the goal of marketing. Like it's that, like that's how this works. And that's the big issue, right? If you are going to do any sort of, no, just foundationally, when I think about every company that has grown to what you said, when they got to 10 million to 100 million, what they uncovered is something that was sustainable and compounding to get them there. And most companies do not have that. And that's where they keep analyzing then, right? You get through the cycle, we're going to hire a new sales leader, we're going to hire a new marketing leader. And every 18 months, they're going to keep doing that until they either die out or something changes. Usually, what I have found after a few years, they kind of come back and they're like, oh shit, those things we were talking about 2 years ago were right and we should have just listened to that, because everybody doesn't want to align an answer to that. Like that's my big issue here is like, let's just say marketing can create demand. It's the idea that it's the job of marketing to do that's a like growth is a company sport and a company issue. And the reason marketing is always on defense is because we're acting like marketing and sales is their job is to drive growth and revenue. And that's not how this works. The entire company is aligned to drive growth and revenue on where the opportunity is, where the product has to go, who the market is, what we're actually going to do to drive sustainable growth. That's what I want people to walk away from. And if you're a marketing leader, what I want you to walk away from this, like as I close my loop, is like that's the new initiative, in my opinion. Like, fuck creating demand. That's not your job. Your job in marketing, you are just one piece of the overall growth picture. If your company doesn't understand what their growth strategy is, you cannot be an effective tool in that growth engine. You are just hacking your way, hoping to find something so you can live from quarter to quarter. Hopefully you made it to the next quarter to, oh shit, we're in a new quarter. How am I going to reach my next pipeline goal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, welcome to reality, right? Let's wrap it up with this one point. I'm gonna lob it up for you here. On top of all of this, how is the whether or not you're creating demand? How is that typically measured by the CEO? What's the CEO looking at every month, every quarter?
We know the answer. The only thing they're looking at is pipeline and revenue. That, like, at the end of the day, it's the short term: is pipeline going up, is revenue going up? That's how they're measuring this. You're not going to go and show your signals, your positive signals, and look at this ad engagement, and we're getting a pulse on our buyers. The ads are really resonating. Like, let's be real. They're only measuring on pipeline and revenue. That's your demand generation game. And that's just not a marketing job. Or they're a small piece, sorry. It's part of the marketing puzzle, but it's not all on marketing to do that.
Not to mention the fact that if you're looking at pipeline every month, every quarter, and you're thinking that your marketing team's primary job is to create demand, and a few months are going by and you're not seeing anything change in the pipeline, then the conversation becomes what it always has been, which is, hey, Johnny, what are you and the rest of the marketing team really doing over there? It doesn't seem like you're creating much demand because the pipeline's just really light. Like, we need more pipeline for this expensive sales team that we've hired here. This whole sales organization, these are pros. They're ready to go. Like, we need to feed them some demand. Can you create some more demand, please? And can you do it now? Because the clock's ticking. We need it by next quarter. And then what kind of behavior does that trigger in marketing, right? Really thoughtful, really brilliant stuff around the perspective of the business and the point of view of, like, the whole thing ends up just looking like a shit show again. Meanwhile, we're all out here patting ourselves on the back saying we're out creating demand now. We're that sophisticated. That's not how the shit go 9 times out of 10. And the people who've been in that situation a few times, they know it. So it's time to wake
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, it's hard, right? You said two things. One, when you're a marketing leader and there's a sales SDR team of 6 people, you don't just let those people starve. That's not how this works, right? Like, you are forced to then do a bunch of low value work in the name of feeding the SDR team, because no one wants to admit the realization that we just shouldn't have 6 SDRs. This is not the path to growth, right? Because that's how you grow. Everybody's got an SDR team and we feed them, and that's the key, right? Like, that's my one thought, and I had another one, but it's this is plenty. This was a fun conversation, actually. Like, it's time to really wake up as marketers, and I think it's just the shit being rammed down our throats as growth strategy and marketing strategy. It's just, I'm disgusted, actually. I'm disgusted going into next year.
And at the same time, let's not get it confused here, right? This isn't a knock on marketers in any way. Like, this is absolutely not a knock on marketers. This is a knock on the narrative that is being created around what marketing is miraculously supposed to do. And this is being created by people who don't have enough empathy for folks who are actually in the situation, for people who are real marketing leaders in regular ass companies.
You know what? One more thing. I know we're going long now. There's something you've said that I just want to admit. Like the people peddling this shit, I'll just say it. Like, they're peddling this create demand shit to sell shit, are not marketing practitioners. They have not lived in marketing with real pressure and what goes on in a marketing function. These are people that have learned how to sell agency and MarTech services and vendor bullshit. And look, I'm an agency, right? Like I obviously have a stake somewhere in the game, but like I mean this for the most part wholeheartedly, which is there's just not a lot of people that are true practitioners that have lived it, that have gone through all the struggles, that actually know what they're saying like is not based in reality. Like I think they believe it, but it's they haven't actually lived it to know what the hell happens inside of a real company.